Why would you get
It's 2017. Spider-Man had just joined the MCU. The impossible happened. If only my dad would come back. Then Homecoming comes out. Tom Holland is absolutely perfect. He nailed the happy-go-lucky kid living in his own world with bad luck so accurately that Betty's description from issue 7, unlike Tobey Maguire, actually fits him. Peter, sometimes I get the feeling that you're laughing at a secret little joke that's all your own.
What?
He is Spider-Man, and he's friggin' hysterical in interviews because he's such a British lad.
I know what sausage roll tastes like, lads.
My only issue is that his performance is a bit too likeable. Peter Parker isn't a sweet, innocent boy, he's a sly trickster with a really bad temper. We have to remember, he insults Flash every day, he toys with Liz Allen's feelings, and loves exploiting JJ's greed. Although if it's any consolation, Tom's version does have a bit of the superiority complex down, so he's still in a very good place.
We all know what's right, we all know what's wrong. Next time those turkeys try to get...
The film itself, to be perfectly honest, I was kind of underwhelmed.
Excuse me.
The immersive and creative filmmaking that both previous versions had was muted by constant bland medium and long shots in every scene, which on one hand sucks in comparison, but on the other hand, the film is striving for a John Hughes style, which is more performance-based than director-driven.
Hi.
Which basically means the camera doesn't favour what the director thinks is cool, but is treated more like a window into the actors and setting. For example, when Ned and Peter are having lunch, they're introduced in a long shot and are continually framed in a medium one that's far enough away for you to see an empty tray in the background. The mise-en-scene invites you into the space's atmosphere, so you can feel how small and socially insignificant they are. In contrast, Raimi's lunchtime begins with an exterior shot of the school, and then a close-up of Peter Parker eating, where he dominates the entire frame, so even though he sits alone, you never feel how awkward or lonely that is. Even when he encounters Mary Jane, or when he gets everyone's attention, the camera always snaps away and locks onto him. This difference in spatial awareness is all over both films, so one is more personal, the other is more social, so at least I'd argue it succeeds on its own individual goals on a filmmaking level. Homecoming, like The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off, is all about being a hangout film, although it still kinda bugs me that the new Spider-Man costume doesn't have raised webbing, so he kinda looks like a naked red CGI man most of the time. But one thing happened between 2017 and 2021 that made me go from meh to
Call them victory ribs.
and that's when I fell in love with Stanley's original run. You see, unlike the Raimi or Webb versions, Homecoming doesn't prioritize the director's interpretation over the source material. Instead, it's all about reapplying Stanley's original tone and structure within a modern setting. Specifically, the first 30 issues, which I've mentioned before, are very sitcom-like. For example, in issue 8, The Living Brain and the Human Torch, Flash knocks Peter Parker's glasses off, so he yells at him, "You're the only accident around here, you clumsy meathead." There's loads of kill insults within this issue, by the way. Then, when the bad guy has a machine that can calculate Spider-Man's true identity, Peter is anxious. Flash is pushy, so he pushes back. "Let me have that paper, Parker. You're too weak to have something so valuable. I'll decode it." "Get your grubby hands off this, Thompson. You couldn't decode your own name unless someone spelled it out for you." The teacher intervenes and suggests Peter Parker and Flash end their feud with a boxing match, which Peter proceeds to just tear him apart in front of everyone. "Okay, loudmouth, the fun's over. Now you're gonna learn a lesson you'll never forget." Then after the fight with the Living Brain, he covers his ass by starting a rumor that Flash was going easy on him because he's Spider-Man. I love this issue because it encapsulates Stanley's sense of humor in such an unbridled and specific way.
So, after 20 years of writing pap and writing things like the strips you mentioned before, I suddenly realized, gee, I can actually have fun with what I'm doing.
There are no consequences because Spider-Man isn't always a miserable drama. It's also a comedy where Peter Parker's school life is a set piece for funny situations that releases the tension from the superhero side, like the story of Big Man, which features the entire city suffering from a crime wave. It's a tense story with loads of drama, but when Peter Parker is trying to lure the enforcers, Flash tries to protect him, and Peter makes the most sly, shit-eating grin as a response. "Thanks for the warning, fella. I didn't know you cared." It's all very much the reverse of the Raimi movies, where it isn't serious drama and silly superhero stuff.
It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind.
It's silly, unmasked drama and serious superhero stuff.
He must be Peter.
Spider-Man Homecoming taps into this long-forgotten arrangement of tones and gives it life. It's a school sitcom mixed with a serious crime mystery with twists and turns and, more importantly, a strong chill-out and hangout vibe. It's 2019, the biggest Hollywood extravaganza happened, and I watched Far From Home afterwards. And I really surprisingly enjoyed it right out of the gate, because I deeply related with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. He's not a dude who can't move on from his childhood crush and tries to get her to cheat on her fiancé, but is a kid in search of his self-worth for the reason that he's so used to being dependent on other people's approval. It's not a very sexy topic, but it feels extremely emotionally honest. And something that's not often portrayed enough, I don't think. Some people criticize this version precisely for this, for the reason that he feels less like Spider-Man, but more like Iron Kid. Although it's never really bothered me because in both films, he learns to let Iron Man go so he can live on his own terms. Tony is probably never going to be a plot point ever again now. Furthermore, Iron Man in spirit functions basically the same as the Fantastic Four and the Avengers in Stan's run. He represents the superhero world that Peter isn't ready to enter due to his childishness. In issue 1 and in the 3rd annual, Spider-Man blunders his membership in getting their aid because he didn't have the patience to listen and got angry. Now hold it, Shellhead. I'm not some nobody who walked in here hat in hand for a handout. If you don't want me to join, say so. I'll promise not to cry. If we substituted Iron Man with very specifically Johnny Storm, who played a mentor role in the high school era, I don't think it'd be as contentious. Or maybe it still would be because no one seems to care about Stan's comics anymore. Far From Home also, bizarrely enough, does a more accurate adaptation of Spider-Man No More's message than Spider-Man 2? Because Peter Parker is manipulated into giving up his responsibility, not because he wanted to smash, which I know makes for great drama, but it's not that story. Instead, Peter Parker didn't trust himself and needed someone else to tell him what is. Then, when his expectations are lifted, he's disappointed that he's not rewarded. The people he thought would be there for him aren't. In the comics, he said, "So I gave up being Spider-Man to have more time for my family and friends, only to find they don't need me. I guess I'll busy myself with a book." And in the film, he says,
"Were you only watching me because you thought I was Spider-Man?"
This is crucial because the point is, things aren't what they seem. The theme of emotional forecasting is what separates MCU Spider-Man from the Raimi and Webb's version, and is what leans him much closer to the psychology of Stan's Spider-Man, who's a dude who often responds to his feelings of disenchantment by over-projecting an answer. His friggin' origins is the result of this. Again, we have to remember, Spider-Man isn't a nice boy who gets powers, becomes a douche to get back at someone, and then returns to being a nice boy again. Proper Peter Parker was a bully victim that wanted to be a bully himself, got his opportunity, profited, and was ready to throw everyone under the bus, minus his aunt and uncle, as a form of revenge. They're the only ones who've ever been kind to me. I'll see to it that they're always happy, but the rest of the world can go hang for all I care. As Wilson and Gilbert argued, affective forecasts are important because people based many decisions on them. Decisions about who to marry, what career to pursue, and whether to donate money to the local homeless shelter are based, at least in part, on predictions about how these decisions will make one feel. To the extent that people's predictions about what will make them happy are flawed, people fail at maximizing their happiness. This is the real Spider-Man, the kid who imagines the wrong future because of the influence and pressures of others. So to grow up, he has to let go of what they said and be confident of his own path. To forecast a more accurate future and maximize his happiness.
You can't trick me anymore.
As a result, more so than any other live-action film, Far From Home reinvigorates those old lessons. MCU Spider-Man learns to let go of Iron Man, and that's the most Spider-Man-y thing you could do with him, to teach him to let go and see himself with his own eyes.
Come on, Peter Tingle.
To go from, what good is my fantastic power if I cannot use it, or must I force to become what they accuse me of being? Must I really become a menace? Perhaps there's the only course left for me. To, Spidey's back in action, and as far as the world's concerned, they better believe it. Stan Lee's original 100-issue Spider-Man run is f***ing awesome and needs to be appreciated and involved in the current discourse. This is not me being nostalgic, by the way, I only read them last year, but they still touched me because it beautifully captured, with tears and more importantly, a big-ass smile, the miasma of growing up, the difficulty of listening to yourself as the world judges you when you're transitioning from a child to an adult. On a surface level, MCU Spider-Man has the least extravagant films, but within that difference, I'd argue it's able to present itself with a tone that pays respect to Stan's personality and legacy, while more importantly capturing what the themes of his journey was and should be about. And not enough people give it enough credit.
I'm so confused right now, baby. Did it work for us? Did it work for us? And I guess it's over now, baby. Did it work for us? Did it work for us?
In the second half of the issue, Spider-Man ruins Human Torch's party to challenge him, then starts a fight with the Fantastic Four because he feels belittled, and flirts with Sue Storm before leaving.
I guess
Crap.